Hey guys, Garrett back for Sableye the Mind Sculptor with another Pauper deck tech. So today we have a Threshold deck. Threshold is an old mechanic that said if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, it's active. So let's get right to the deck. The backbone of the deck are Threshold creatures. So first we have Wild Mongoose, which is a 1/1 for 1 with Shroud that gets 2/2/2+ for Threshold. Next is Frightcrawler, a 1/1 for 2 with Fear that gets 2/2/2+ if you have Threshold. And Werebear, a 1/1 for 2 that can tap to add a green mana to your mana pool that gets 3/3/3+ if you have Threshold. So thinking of these, we have a 3/3 for 1 with Shroud, a 3/3 with Fear for 2, and a 4/4 Mana Dork for 2 if you have Threshold. So you guys can clearly see how amazingly efficient Threshold is. Well, there are some less efficient cards that made the cut. For instance, Anurid Backripper, which is a 4/4 for 3 when you have Threshold. You guys get the general gist. I'm also running 4 Sign in Blood just because I needed to make sure I could draw all the cards that I needed to keep this going, and Sign in Blood is extremely efficient in black. So what is our engine for getting to 7 cards in the graveyard? First, we got Wild Mongrel, which says discard a card, it gets 1/1+ and becomes the color of your choice until end of turn. Other than that, it's just your standard bear. So what this is going to let us do is discard Stinkweed Imp and Shambling Shell, which are both dredgers, which means when they're in the graveyard, the next time you get to draw a card, you can instead mill off the top X cards of your library, where X is their dredge, and you get to draw that card instead. So for instance, Stinkweed Imp lets you dredge 5 cards off the top of your library and then draw that imp. Shambling Shell, our other dredger, lets you dredge 3 cards off the top of your library and draw the shell. Shell has the added utility that you can sacrifice it to put a 1/1+ counter on a creature, which lets it get into the graveyard more easily. Stinkweed Imp is just nice because it's a small death toucher, which is very good against certain decks. So moving on, we have just a few more cards left in the deck. These are cards that enjoy being put in the graveyard. So first is Chainer's Edict, which is a 2-mana Edict effect or a 7-mana Edict effect on flashback. So extremely efficient. If you actually get up to 7 and you have a couple of these in your graveyard, it feels really good. And then Gnaw to the Bone, which is a 3-mana instant that says you gain 2 life for each creature card in your graveyard, and then it also flashes back for 3. So this is extremely effective against aggressive decks. I have these in the main board because I was afraid of getting run over. Testing showed that that wasn't really that big of a deal, but Gnaw to the Bone was still very good in a lot of matchups. So moving into the sideboard, we have Nile Spellbomb, which is good against opposing graveyard decks. And honestly, this card is cool because against certain matchups, some of your cards are just dead. Like, some matchups, removal doesn't matter at all. Nile Spellbomb comes in and it always cycles for 2 mana. That's the worst it is. So it's cool in that it hoses some decks, but it also lets you have a cycler for 2 mana. Then we have Choking Sands for Tron, because, oh my god, Tron is good if you don't have this. Pulse of Marasa, which beats aggressive matchups and is just also good in some other matchups. Gleeful Sabotage, which is good against any artifact deck, or against Boggles in some cases. And then Nausea for tokens. So, I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. I will see you with some games with this deck. Until then, peace out.